Hello hero, it's Lucy Lannon. I'm alive, I'm well, everything is peachy. I apologise for the last few days. Unfortunately, when you have long-term disabilities that are invisible, health issues, etc., sometimes you encounter an unexpected flare-up, and I've had the privilege over the last couple of days, so it's been an interesting time of sitting in bed, being in doctor's offices, hospitals, etc. But I'm back on it now. We're still doing youtober. I will make up for any videos lost in terms of uploading multiple videos over the coming days. So if you're not subscribed, please do to check that out. And if you are subscribed, make sure that you've clicked the bell so that if I put 2-3 readings up in a day, you're going to be notified of all of them, okay? Also, slight apologies about my nails. They are bare for the moment. That's because when I am in hospital, I have to be checked for things like oxygen levels sort of very quickly. And yes, we have SATS machines, but also there are indicators in the nails as to whether I am bluish for my particular condition. So something to bear in mind there. I'm also pulled to say, for a bunch of you who might be new and watch lots of tarot readings, maybe reserve judgment on people's nails, you know? Like, it's lovely to see long, fancy ones that have cost a lot of money and all the rest of it. But again, like, it's a disability issue sometimes. Sometimes people can't always appear on camera in exactly the way you'd like, and it doesn't mean that the information is not going to be accurate. So with all that out of the way, I'd also like to introduce you to Sarah Sanderson. Hello. Yes, she is covered in paint. This is not my choice. I rescued her and her 2 sisters from Sainsbury's the other night, having gone out for essentials and nothing else. What do you know? Realising they were covered in novelty paint for Halloween, and that actually, obviously, they can't absorb sunlight through the leaves that way. So we're in a process, as you can see, of slowly removing Sarah's outer accoutrements, which may be relevant to you in some way. You may be having a glow up at the moment, or removing some of the affectations of former companionships or something like that. But I just want to point her out and say, send her some love, because of the 3 sisters, she's been the most difficult to remove this excess from. But compared to when I bought her, she is thriving. She's opened up quite a lot. She's looking a lot sparkier. So fingers crossed, right? But I thought, since this is a witchy channel and many of you are on that wavelength, maybe send her a bit of energy, and then we can remove the last of this purple. And if you are not familiar with plants and you see ones in a funny colour at this time of year, please either buy them and rescue them by taking the paint off, as I've done, or make sure that you don't sort of fund that, right? It's not ideal. Okay, catch up out of the way, let's get to piles. Today we are doing a reading about what it is that you need to know in general, so neither of us have any idea what's coming, don't you worry. For pile 1 we have the Vertigo DC Tarot and this opal ring, which I hope you can see properly. And for pile 2 we have the Aquarian Tarot and this Labradorite ring. Again, sorry if it's not quite focusing, there we go. So yeah, pile 1, pile 2, these are just excess stuff that we will use for both piles. And let's get to your reading, shall we? Pile 1, this ring and the DC Vertigo Tarot. Let's give us a quick shuffle, including reversals, shall we? Just for a bit more information. Sorry, there's a bit of sage scrappings there because I was cleansing before we began. That may be an indicator that you need to cleanse, because that was a bit of an odd shuffle as well. So if you're in the habit of smudging or doing other sorts of cleansing rituals around the house, it may be a good time to pause this video and just get on with that. That may be part of what you need to know. I feel like these are good to go. I'm not going to take those. I'm going to pop them there, and we're going to get your other stuff. So the number we are working with is 3. I feel like I'm on Sesame Street. 1 number. And we've picked out the card we're working with, which says exuberance. Wonderful. And I am feeling a little bit exuberant, considering that just the other day I was in quite a bad way, if you saw the intro. I think this is a good sign, right? I think it's me feeling fancy free for anything fancy, a little bit fruity, a little bit sort of, I don't know, like in a positive mindset. It seems to be a bit contagious. I'm not going to take you because I want to flip some of these, thank you very much. But if you come out again, we know that you are really trying to come out from the word go. These are the Miss Caroline Mace archetype cards, if you're not familiar with them already. Let's have this one. Oh, shapeshifter, nice. So, my exuberant shapeshifter, my werewolf with chutzpah. Perhaps that's what you're going as for Halloween if you're seeing this live. I want to take some off the top, which I don't normally do. So, let's get started with 4 and we can go from there as we go. Alright, so Queen of Cups reversed, 2 of Swords, 5 of Swords, and a 10 of Swords. Well, it's not been a great time, has it? As much as there is exuberance coming in what you need to know. I also feel pulled for another one. Ace of Wands, okay. What do I want to say about these in combination? Let's get into the 3rd house first. Ah, perhaps you are not the one exuberantly shape-shifting. Give me a moment, guys. Taking it all in. Let's twist this. It'll help me think a little bit. Thinking is the domain of the 3rd house as well. There are very sort of Gemini energies, intellectualizations, ruminations going on, both with that number and with the sort of amount of swords in the cards. It's a very mental reading, very thought-based. Light attributes of shapeshifter, skill at navigating through different levels of consciousness and ability to see the potential in everything. Is that a blessing or a curse, I ask you? I think you've been overthinking some shit. I think it may be in relation to, what do I want to say, like a sibling, a family member, something like that. But only take what resonates because this is a general reading for a large audience. There is words. Now why is that coming out back to front? Excuse me. One moment, guys. What got to do with it? Oh, okay. This is really hitting home for recent times. Some of you may have had a health crisis that has affected speech or memory or cognition, mental processes. You may have discovered a neurodivergence, you may have had a brain injury, you may have had some form of clotting or something. Hey, clot gang, I am a stroke survivor, nice to meet you. And if none of that hits, it's not a warning that it's upcoming or anything like that. I don't do that on this channel, a diagnosis as a curse. This is instead to say that some of the sort of cognitive fatigue and a bit of like stimulation overwhelm is going on for you at the moment, and that is a symptom of these kinds of things. So it's making me think of that, and that's why I asked Spirit why stuff was relevant, because they were telling me stroke, right? Because this is what happened to me. Ability to see the potential in everything is interesting with this one, because something that happened when I was ill, or that opened up more, should I say, because I'd already sort of had the skill. The sensory stuff that was coming in was no longer just a sensory overwhelm in the sense of cognitive fatigue, but it became about everybody's energies. So you may also resonate as somebody who is very empathic, or who is discovering, I want to say, psychic skills broadly. I know that's a problematic word that's very demonized, but those kinds of things. And I feel that this is why you're approaching symptomatic stuff from a logical space, very very swordsy, because you don't want to see, with this sword crossing through the eye, that it could be about something a lot more intuitive, or maybe you're drawn to this video or to this channel as someone who doesn't watch that much of this kind of stuff, just because you have an inkling of something else creeping in, but you want to understand it in a rational or logical way. Partly because it's become overwhelming for you. There is something going on with speech, thought processes, being different. being different things to different people in that shapeshifter way, taking on different roles in a way that's no longer manageable, getting your words out, getting your thoughts collected, focusing on one thing, or one sense I'm getting for some of you. So like being able to focus visually when there's lots of noise going on, or being able to focus on the smell of something when there's a lot of visual stimulation, or, it's kind of like one replacing the other becomes, or honing in on one over the other, should I say, becomes quite a difficult thing with these cognitive barriers, especially in a sort of ableist society. Because you're expected to keep up, right, all the time, no matter what. And particularly if you are somebody who is getting extra messaging, you may seem even more dopey, in inverted commas. Your processing may be evident to other people in a way that is sort of semi-embarrassing for you in some way, or you've been feeling just that other people are perceiving you as, I don't want to use this word because it's an incredibly ableist word when it's misused, but slower in your processes, right? It takes longer, literally. Excuse me, my body didn't like using that word either. Bark away, that's it. You fight the power. Excuse me, guys, I'm sorry about that. With the Queen of Cups in reverse, this is an attempt to deny emotion around this, or an attempt to deny intuitive input coming in. So you take it as you see fit. A Two of Swords is an indecision about something, which I think is partly why you've come to this reading or found me somehow from somewhere. It's like, is it this? Is it that? Is it something I should worry about health-wise? Is it something that's purely psychic? Do I even believe in psychic stuff? There's a sort of dichotomy that you're choosing between there. You may be a skeptic. This channel should be skeptic friendly, just sort of, again, with the take what resonates, just skip the woo, right? Where I mention things that aren't for you, that's okay. Tarot can be a thought experiment. So I'm pulled to say that if you're brand new and you're just having weird shit happen with your thought processes or with stuff going on, and you don't quite know where to put it. So you're like, well, here's a tarot reader. They might have a take on this, even if it's a take that I enthusiastically, exuberantly disagree with, and that's my sort of permission to move on with this. I tend to approach tarot as an exploration of the self. Yes, it can tell us things about the outside world, but the more interesting information that we get generally is what we can work on. So take that as it fits. But whatever your situation, even if you're a magician or a reader or something like that, there is a split here between again, with the brain stuff, right, sides of the brain. But there is a split between understanding something in the old paradigm versus a new paradigm, or between, should I get assistance on this, should I not, is it natural? Or between, is this something spiritual versus something physical? There's a concern overall. Five of Swords, I don't think you want to speak about this to other people because it's going to cause conflict, right? It's a very straightforward interpretation with the sword moving through the mouth. Also notice that these elements of the face in that wonderful Dave McKean way that only he can do, even now Mid-Journey exists and basically sort of looks like his stuff all the time. It's this drifting of different elements, different senses, divergent from each other again, right? It's seeing and hearing in ways that don't agree with each other, speaking in ways that don't agree with what the senses are taking in, perhaps because in the immediate environment around you, you have to be aware of what other people's belief systems and frameworks and pacing is, right? So this could be an ableism reading of like, you're not keeping up right now and that's okay. Or this could be a more sort of spiritual awakening reading where strange stuff is happening with sensory input, or the senses are slowing down, or thought processes are becoming more of a web, or more kind of like sand drifting into itself, and less like linear ... I'm seeing Lilu in the fifth element going dot, like pointing here, and it sort of should be straightforward, right? But it's not. It's no longer straightforward. The shapeshifter thing here could be you shifting into a new self which understands this, which incorporates this, which can deal with it, right? So bear that in mind as well. but with the ability to see the potential in everything, that really speaks to me of stuff coming in that is too big for your previous understanding or for your senses to get across in an articulate, steady way. For those who are already on this kind of a path, it may be that new gifts are coming in and you feel exuberant about that, but you're also a little cautious about ways to integrate them because there's almost TMI at once, right? You may feel overwhelmed, not just sort of cognitively, but in terms of being wiped out, in terms of the next, I guess what people call download, although I don't see it that way, but the next wave of information coming in kind of knocks you off your feet. And it's really difficult to juggle this when you're also juggling other people's expectations of same. It's not out yet, but if you're not a subscriber, you may enjoy the lunar reading from this month, which uses the blood tarot. Where we talk about kind of people's expectations versus what it is that you can manage, and indeed what it is your job to micromanage in terms of other people kind of keeping up. And I don't mean that in a disparaging way, I just mean that people operate under different systems. I think, now which one was it? It might be the one for the full moon, but I'm not positive on that. So just, if you go to my main page, you'll see which one looks like the blood tarot, which has kind of Rorschach, imagery on it. And click cue me for the premiere for that, because it may be relevant to all this. It's not a must. I'm not saying you have to look elsewhere on the channel. It just might be useful. Ten of Swords is that this has been causing you no small amount of pain, particularly mentally. Again, diagrams, equations, words, excess of information. You could also be a student who feels that you're not necessarily keeping up with the material at the moment. And you're sort of concerned as to why your processes are operating slightly differently, or you feel slowed down, or there's something kind of coming in. What I'm getting is that this isn't necessarily, unless you know that it's a health issue, and I'm speaking to my disabled or otherwise altered mutant gang, this might be that you're worried that it's a health issue, and it's not, but it's like a new wave of the way that you understand and operate starting to apply in a way that's uncomfortable to begin with, right? As these things often are. You don't really get a paradigm shift without some form of crisis first, or some form of adjustment, getting used to it, getting into it, getting into the groove, right? That doesn't have to always be a tower moment. Your world doesn't have to collapse. It can simply be that you're noticing that in communication, particularly in larger groups, you're speaking a little slower, or you're struggling a little to get yourself across a bit. Some of you, I'm hearing stand-up is a thing, and you're noticing that, like, in performing to other people or in public speaking of some kind, you're a little less confident, or the flow is a bit more sort of sporadic, a bit more staccato, and that's not like you, so you're slightly concerned, and that's why you found me. But I don't think it's a negative, nor do I think that style of a bit more of a staccato or a bit more of a free-flowing, non-associative kind of communication is necessarily negative. You may have noticed already in this reading or on the channel that the way that I sort of gather ideas is a bit like that, right? And that's partly as a result of being a witch, partly as a result of being a stroke survivor. But things start to come in a slightly different way. And that doesn't mean that you can't loop those ideas together and kind of lasso them into one place. It just means that the way that you go about things is going to be very unique to you from now on. And that may actually be a really positive thing in terms of branding, right? Something I kind of remind myself of as a reader on a very small channel, please like, is that, you know, there may be other people out there reading, and they may have the same cards as me, or they may sort of do some of the same topics as me, or there may be imitations even in places, but they're not going to read like me because, you know, not to sound arrogant, but nobody thinks like me, just in the same way that nobody thinks like you. And that, my dude, is an asset. It is something you can monetize. It is something that you can incorporate into an act or a business proposal, or even just a way of operating within a party or within a date or whatever it is. I think that what's happening, whether it's spiritual, material, cognitive, whatever, it might be environmental for some, but whatever it is going to shift the way that you communicate in I want to say permanent way. Semi-permanent might feel better for some of you. But it's kind of sweeping in to say, if you can be comfortable in expressing yourself in this particular way, or in operating differently in the way that you think or take in information, or the way that your senses operate for some of you, then that's going to be something that other people see as making you, right? Which is why I use the example of myself. It's not, I'm not tooting my own horn here. I'm not saying I'm the best reader out there necessarily. But what I am saying is that even something that seems initially adverse or difficult, or that sort of empties your inner filing cabinet and shakes the contents onto the floor, can be a good thing, right? In picking up those different files to put them back in a drawer as I'm speaking to you, I'm sourcing them from different places than I would if everything was intact. Or to use a more modern metaphor, if you've kind of defragged your hard drive, yes, things are in a different place, but that place is beneficial, or that new setup is beneficial to the health of the whole system, yeah? Ace of Wands is a call to applying this creatively in this case. There is also a thing here about carrying a torch for yourself, not just for someone else, right? This is moving through the hand, moving through the echoes of the hand, the sort of palmistry or life path of the individual. If that sounds a bit woo for you, I'm just talking about imagery here, right? But there's a sense of a creative act represented by the wand moving through the intention of what it is that you were planning. And I'm drawn to that old phrase, and you're gonna dislike me for saying it, but life is what happens when you make plans. I had planned a specific career before I had a brain injury, and it was going very well. I had sort of decided on what I thought was fated about my future, the people that I thought would be in my future, the way that I would communicate with those people and how they would receive that stuff. All of these assumptions, I now realise, were quite arrogant of me to have at that time, particularly, at 30, where, I still feel I don't know shit, but particularly at 30, you don't know shit. And when all of this stuff swept in and I had to learn to read again, to think again, to communicate in a slightly different way as I was beginning the channel and sort of shifting my practice from in-person readings, there was a lot of, I can't do all of this now because I'm operating differently. When actually the underlying message, if I'd just listened instead of speaking over it, was that this was the new way to do things. This was the thing that was going to make it exactly correct, right? And I couldn't have done it in my previous job or under my previous brain. So things had to work out as they worked out. Now, let's get some more on that. Now we know roughly what we're talking about. It's interesting, that card seems to have come up a lot recently in personals as well. On the note of personals, my shop reopens, my online shop reopens on the 22nd, so do check out the link down below if you want something more personal from me. I feel like that's for us. Although I'm doing that thing again where I pick from the bottom and I can sort of see, so apologies guys, it's really not a fixed result. I'm just pulling from, I get like glowing cards or cards by touch or whatever. Right, so bottom of the deck, King of Cups in reverse, so that's interesting as well, because again it's this kind of, I want to say it's a failure of an attempt to control all of this and rationalise it and be this stoic floating King of Cups figure, but you'll see actually in attempting to turn the water upside down, when you invert the card, there's much more of a kind of Radiohead No Surprises feel of almost drowning in emotion, with words in it, right? With intuitive impressions for some of you, or in trying to make things very technical, very strategic, in trying to apply plans and systems to things. I think you've been overwhelmed recently by emotion, or you may find that those things just don't work because the water flows through through the cracks of what it is that you've planned. Sorry. It's almost like I'm getting someone putting documents on a table, saying I'm going to do this thing on Thursday, and then this thing here, and then this thing will apply to this thing. And they spill their coffee, and the coffee flows in the space in between those things, soaks some of them, rolls some of them out, right? Again, see prior example. But also carves a new path that doesn't involve the system whatsoever, right? Because it's the flow of a different kind of a thing. And that's what we're talking about here in the way that you've been thinking, operating, receiving, sensing, presenting with Shapeshifter here. There is exuberance to come, right? This has been a sort of desolate reading, but I think that it will become something that you're proud of, something that will add exuberance and joy when embracing it, but we'll get into that. Four of Pentacles reversed. You may feel that this is preventing the flow of money, the flow of creative communication, particularly for those of you in the arts, with this being like 3 sort of streaks of crayon just here. I want to say if you're in comics as well, with you picking the DC Vertigo one. I feel, again, it's not that you can't create, it's that you're being pulled by this Ace of Wands to create in a different way. And I actually think that when you do that and when you embrace new ways of thinking, new ways of experiencing, new sensory input, or new pacing for how much you can energy manage your time rather than project manage your time, because the two are very different. Once you sort of incorporate all of that, you will be very creative again, and you'll be able to monetize that creativity. With the energy management versus project management, again, I've had it a bit over the last few readings, so if you're a recent subscriber, this may, hit home even more so. But if you're not up on spoon theory, I think that it would be a really useful thing to research. Yes, it applies more to people with invisible disabilities or fatigue problems or cognitive differences or whatever. But I think more in your case, even if you are completely able-bodied, this has nothing to do with your health, you've just been finding yourself a bit burnt out recently or operating in a slightly different way and other people are noticing, you may still want to go to the analogy of spoon theory and talking about how many spoons you have left in a day and how to manage projects around those things in order to be at your best, your highest functioning, your most productive, right? So this is a message for everybody, no matter what your health is like. Do check that out. It's a good thing to consider with other people, but it's also a good thing to apply when you are trying to be strategic about how you manage your day or how you go about a long-term project, or kind of express yourself with this stuff flowing in between what it is that you plan originally. With the Hermit coming up here, I do feel this is something that you need to undergo solo. And with the hands, again, being different colours, it's like different sorts of energy coming in. So there may be time needed to reconcile the way that you operate in what I want to call a trial run. What do I mean by that? If you're having to present on something, I think that you should do it in private first. And I mean really private, no audience. Excuse me. Confirmation. No test subject, no constant reader, no spouse sat at the end of the bed. I want you to do this completely by yourself at first and just kind of run through the ways that how you're thinking and operating for the moment can be incorporated into what it was that you wanted to do. If this isn't some kind of presentation or product or, that's a very capitalist framework to think under, and we're not all there. Not all of us are able to work, right? If this is just talking about expression, socializing, recovery, energy management in general, again, I think that the privacy of going about things completely solo or managing this completely solo, and again, that blood lunar reading may be relevant, that's for you, right? You need to do this completely on your own. If there is useful information, perhaps from the spoon stuff, perhaps from a medical practitioner, great stuff. But you're going to know best what works for you. And particularly for my psychic collective, I think if you take the time away from all other influences, all other examples of what any fucker else is doing, excuse my language, and you just concentrate on your gifts, on your aims, on your mission, and on your input and how it seems to happen, you will very quickly get to grips with this. Whereas if you go to other people to ask how their experiences have informed how they work, you will get an answer that relates to their brain, to their energy levels, to their time constraints, to their familial setup even. You won't get what is necessarily right for you. So there is a need to retreat, to think about this, because you've been in this thinking energy in terms of rumination and imposition of strategic elements. But what I want you to do is to marry it with the more intuitive or wavy gravy or out of control kind of stuff by thinking instead how this new input feeds back to you about your life, your self-concept, your mission, what it is that you might want to do next, all those kinds of things. You may also be drawn to my control and surrender reading, or my artist, which is spiritual practitioners reading that I did a few days back within youtober. So it's in the youtober playlist. High Priestess reversed. This is again indication that you're kind of blocking this new stuff. It may also be a sign that you want to keep this process, these worries, these thoughts secret for the time being, particularly if it is something that you've seen as health related, so that other people around you aren't worried, right? Obviously, if you have a long-standing health condition or you're extremely worried for your mental health, see a practitioner. But what I mean is that if this is a new sensory thing for you and you're kind of in recovery, or if this is something that you're like, I'm not sure whether this is a health problem or whether I'm just overwhelmed, then it would be good to retreat away from people just for a sec to figure that out before you go for outside help. So it's an echo of this energy in the same way, although I am not a licensed medical practitioner. So if anybody doesn't seek help for something that is an emergency, it is not on me for you seeing this reading, okay? That's not what I'm advising at all. I'm just saying that if you're like, I don't know whether there's something, for example, neurodivergent going on, or whether in a related thing I have CPTSD, which often has very similar symptoms that are lifelong, then the way to figure that out at the moment is not necessarily to go to a health practitioner, but to kind of receive for a moment how these things operate. When do you feel that your behaviour is slightly different, or your operating system is slightly different, right? And under what circumstances, what potential triggers are there, what other factors are there? Are you in very busy public spaces and feeling overwhelmed? Are you in a stressful familial situation? All these kinds of things come into play. And that doesn't mean that you don't then go to a practitioner of some kind and say, hey, I think this is going on. It just means that for the day that you're seeing this reading, you maybe take 5, you have a trial run of something that you've been wanting to do that you're worried about because of this stuff. And in doing the trial run of it, you observe objectively, using this wonderful swords energy that you've been doing, kind of what's happening for you, what's coming in, what your problems are, and you kind of note those, integrate them with how you're feeling about those things, because thoughts and feelings are very intertwined in this reading. And then maybe you turn your attention outward into, okay, what are my next steps now that I know myself? The feeling overall is that whatever has been going on to make your modus operandi kind of different, for the moment, is something that you've been too embarrassed to fully acknowledge. So you haven't been in a state of receptivity in terms of what it actually is, right? What does it affect in terms of your emotions as well, in terms of how you relate to others? And in receiving that energy, even just for a day, you can then take the necessary steps to say, right, what can I do with it now that I know more about it? There's a definite feeling of needing to accept yourself for where you are at the moment before you can expand into seeking tools to deal with that particular thing. And even that is quite ableist language from me, and I do apologise, because that almost implies that it's a problem to be fixed. Whereas the impression that I get from all of this is actually that it's a kind of new set of gifts or set of circumstances coming in, which are going to be informative, right? Everything is feedback, particularly on this channel. We try and look at everything first from how we can take responsibility, and then from the outside world. And I think that this is a state of feedback that you've been uncomfortable with because it's really affected how you go about things. But I don't think that that means that the feedback is negative. I think it just means that you need to take some time to absorb, right? The devil in reverse, this is again resisting temptation. I think this speaks to this possible impulsivity. Excuse me while I move. Sorry about that. Possible impulsivity around how you're processing this, in terms of either panicking about it and then sort of making it bigger than it needs to be for the moment, or in feeling emotionally overwhelmed by any physical changes or sort of messages coming in, or, you know, for my psychics, a lot of the information we get can be very physically overwhelming. It can bring sudden waves of emotion that aren't necessarily yours. It can flash you back to stuff in your own life that you weren't expecting to see. All kinds of things can happen that take you on a different track. And I think you're grappling with that at the moment with this devil reverse. You're loosening those chains and saying, I'm going to be a shapeshifter. I'm going to weave in and out of identities for the time that this stuff is happening. And I'm going to accept whatever it is that I'm receiving and notice in a sort of distant inner observer way, like we do in meditation, how I'm watching it, how the inner me, the inner consciousness me, is seeing all of this play out and going, it's interesting that when this sensory thing happened, I felt these ways and I felt that emotion in this part of my body. Or it's interesting that when this person was rude about my difference in cognition because they couldn't see why it was happening, I felt this thing about this point in my life and I felt shame, right? That's another big one for this. And again, sorry to go over using myself as an example, but one of the first things that happened to me in recovery was going back to a day job that I sort of realised very quickly I couldn't manage. Meeting somebody who I had altercations with in school, who they really didn't like me for whatever reason, and they came into my work and I was unable to use some of the stuff at my work properly, and they sort of saw that as reflective of my intelligence, reflective of my capability at my job, which I was very good at, and started to sort of echo the way that they'd behaved at school and be a bully, really, and sort of make snide comments and things. And I was devastated, and I went home that day feeling absolutely awful, and that affected physical fatigue because emotional stuff does in recovery. So I use that example to say that if something that is either a reaction from another person or something that you fear that they'd say or do, even an audience if you are a public speaker, how does that relate back to stuff in your past where you felt that same way, or you've been made to feel shame about a certain thing? For me, I realised that it was actually a blessing meeting that specific person on that day, not only because they would probably never enter my life and try and kiss and make up again, but also because it was sort of information, extra info about that time, and a sort of both a clarification of how I was projecting my new state to other people and feeling unnecessary shame about something out of control that had happened to me. And also a clarification, if I'm honest, that, you know, once a bully, always a bully, and that's not my issue. So if you are experiencing some kind of thing where people around you are making you feel less than exuberant because you're operating differently to how you used to do, then this is your kind of wake-up call as to how much of that is your problem, and also what it relates back to you that you're feeling bigger stuff about, right? Is there a general self-concept around that particular thing? Is there a memory tied to being called a certain name or thought of in a certain way? Or if you are lifelong disabled, and again, is there resentment around always being an outsider, or always having to be operating differently and having to kind of struggle for acceptance or to justify very everyday things? I think many of you will have watched the full intro on this one. I know not everyone always does. And you'll have noticed that intro and where I talked about the thing with the nails and stuff, because that also speaks to this feeling, right? Of like, I can't begin to explain to you how all-encompassing this is, and it feels unfair that it affects so many things, and now there's kind of another thing, right? So if that is a mood that you're in, I very much feel you on that, and I do encourage you to reach out to other people about those feelings, but perhaps after you've had a conscious way of processing them in private, whether that's journaling, just meditating on the idea, finally sort of speaking out loud about it as if you're talking to a trusted friend or someone who does get it, you know, because many of us are surrounded by people who never will, for the best will in the world, right? So it's all of these kinds of things weaving in. Again, this won't relate to everybody, but I hope you can see how the kinds of undercurrents of it are something that you can take as they resonate and apply to your specific situation. Now, with the Ten of Pentacles in the upright ending this, there is an abundance coming in. There is an exuberance as promised. Sorry, Sarah. To do with all of this. And as I said, the gift of this alteration in circumstance is actually that it's going to alter the way that you're perceived and the way you do communicate, and you're going to shapeshift into a new version of self, which is not less appealing to the people around you, but more appealing. Or, in a case similar to my own with the example at work, it might be that this new self filters out the people in your life that are not really meant for you at this time, or the influences or even jobs or even locations that are not conducive to your highest good, your highest purpose, your true will. Again, I do readings on that in the shop. But there's something here that, although it is sort of, I want to say that there's a full spectrum here, from earth-shattering, complete physical change to slight cognition difference, which is tough in the way that you express, right? But wherever you are on that spectrum, it's shifting how other people perceive you in a way that will shift who shows up for you, where you are, what you're doing work-wise, and therefore how much can come in if you are able to work. And I think there's a future of abundance to look forward to in a monetary, security-based way, but also in the sense of having the right people, sort of finding your tribe, right? Whether that's online or in person, having the right influences coming in, being in the right setting, even if that setting is an uncomfortable one, right? Again, with the intro, I was speaking about spending some time in hospital over the last few and how it's been a complete palate cleanser. And you may notice a difference in my voice from the last reading or from the Lunas, which I filmed before. There's this kind of shaking the thing of who you are, almost like turning you upside down, shaking you, and everything empties out of the pockets, and then you're being put upright and going, oh, actually, I don't know why I was carrying all that. You know, so there's that kind of feeling to it, and I don't want to be patronizing when I say that, because I really do understand that if you're dealing with things around how you process, how you communicate, how you understand, even how you take in information, and therefore how much you can enjoy media, which was a big thing for me for a long time because I was a filmy and then I couldn't see, right? All of that stuff, I really get how much of a big deal it can be. But I also want to say to you that the reason you're seeing this now, and maybe you want to, you know, put it aside somewhere to watch it when you're feeling slightly more exuberant, it's a promise of a decent future with this, of an abundant way of living and of shape-shifting into your new self in a way that is actually very promising, and a way where people don't look down on you for your differences, but look up to you because of the way that you incorporate those things and express yourself so uniquely that nobody could ever imitate it, nobody could ever come close to it, and nobody can tell your story, which is another thing about swords, right? It's the storyteller. And maybe the only reason you're seeing this right now, if you're feeling low about all this stuff, is for me to tell you that there is promise, there is abundance, there is security in your future, there is creativity, but also the exuberance is going to come from telling this story of woe back to the people around you and realizing just what a gift it all was. I'm not saying that to be trite. I'm not saying everything works out for the best, right? Because it's, you know, it's just bollocks. And it's very frustrating for those who weren't born into privilege. But what I am saying is that this particular set of circumstances is going to do you more favours, particularly in the eyes of others, than what it is that you've just struggled to leave behind, even if that's just a casual way of operating, right? This could be that you're just having a bad weekend and you're feeling overwhelmed and you're thinking differently, all the way over in the spectrum to you've had a life-changing, earth-shattering illness. Either way, I'm speaking to you. Things are going to get better. You're going to feel lively, exuberant, boisterous. You're going to feel not even more like yourself, but just like this new and improved, fantastic self. And you're going to shapeshift into this place where you can see the potential in everything, including your own situation, and that the messages coming in from your senses or from other places are not going to overwhelm you so much as they're going to be part of this integrative web of what it is that makes you you, and that you can express to the world and give back as a kind of a gift. Wow, what a big one. If you found this useful, please do like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. Share with anybody that you think may see the relevance in this, because at this moment I have just over 30 subscribers and I'd like to make it one of those YouTube channels that comes up in searches, because this is my main way of making money. And as you may have gathered, as a disabled person, work hours and all of that kind of stuff are a little tricky, so it'd be good to get that bank rolling in by getting more exposure. So I'm going to be real with you, that is part of my purpose here, but I also hope that it's done the other job of these kinds of readings and it's helped you out, given you a leg up, told you something that maybe you hadn't thought about, or that you'd known on the inner and needed knowing consciously, if that makes sense. Please do feedback in the comments if that's the case, and I will hopefully see you in the next one. Hello Hero, if you chose pile 2 with the labradorite ring and the Aquarian Tarot, this is your reading. I want to say, because I said hello Hero, you may not have watched all of the intro, and there may be something useful in there for you if you didn't, so please do go back and check that out if you immediately skip to your pile, because hello Hero is the way that I greet people on this channel, so it implies to me that you just kind of picked one and went for it without seeing the other stuff, and there may be something there for you. Let's roll this first. The number we are working with is 11. Excellent stuff. That's a nice difference from pile 1, although if you are watching both piles, hail and welcome again. There may be just a different message, you know, one in each. I'm happy for you to do that. Let me know in the comments which pile was for you, which resonated, etc. This one wants to come out. Ah, what a nice thing to start on. And let's get your keyword. Bum, ba, da, ba, bum. Do you want to, is it you? No? Excuse me, guys. Last reading was, it got a little heavy there, so I have cleansed and discombobulated, but or de-discombobulated, should I say, but slow on the uptake at the moment. Empowerment! Wow, we've had exuberance and empowerment today. What lovely messages to begin with. Okay. And we have a card leaping to get out. There we go. Ooh. Unusual start. Bear with. We don't know yet. Going to start with 4 like I did in the last pile. Now I'm going to start with 5, it says, like I did in the last pile. And then we're going to do further shuffling in a moment. Okay. Knight of Swords reversed, 2 of Pentacles, the Temperance reversed, King of Wands reversed, and a Devil reversed. Give me one moment, guys. I feel like this is to do with friendship because we're talking 11th house, but it could also be a few other things. And as we're in the Aquarian Tarot, that may just relate to you being an Aquarius or having strong Aquarius, in which case, hello from an Aquarian ascendant. I am also in the gang. Seeing the potential for sacred beauty in all things, the belief that everything is possible. Wonderful. I'm also drawn to this, which I think is a... I want to say it's a kind of fluorite. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that might be something to work with. It's just vibing at me at the moment. Right, 2 seconds while I just figure this one out. Okay, I think this is a social management reading. Which may relay back to pile 1 in terms of thinking about energy management, but it's also just kind of checking in with how you operate within connections. And I am very much, again, you may not have seen the intro, but after having a few days off for circumstances out of my control, I very much resonate with this myself at the minute. It's a position that I've been in a few times. I think you have a lot of friends or a lot of acquaintances or connections that you see great potential in, or, you know, outer network people that you want to be closer to. For some of you, and it won't resonate for all because it's a general reading, so take what does. But for some, you've recently joined an organisation, a course, a job, a club of some kind, and there are people involved in that you really want to get to know better. Again, relate hard. But there are also people from, I was going to say from lots of different areas of your past, but what I heard coming in was lots of different pasts. So you may have been somebody like me who's had lots of kind of phases where you've moved around a lot, or you've had different careers, or you have so many interests simultaneously that you kind of have factions of friendship groups that operate within each realm, and kind of never the twain shall meet because you sort of see them in that context, right? Not a bad thing. I actually think that's very healthy, but there's something here about, like, because there are loads and loads of groups for you, or loads of places where you've sort of met different people, and those things have accumulated over time. And then you also have enthusiasm about people that you've maybe just met or want to meet, you know, sliding into the DMs is coming through. There's something here about being up at night or having anxiety that's sort of recently over, I guess, about managing those different things with each other, or about feeling overwhelmed from a social perspective. You may have had a few days out of being social, or longer than a few days if you came from pile 1, right, out of necessity. You may also have just started this new endeavour, if that resonated for you, and you haven't kind of caught up with people from the past before the point that a new influx of empowering friendships was coming in. And you kind of want to address both, but it's like, there's too much now, there's too much going on. You may also be somebody who is bombarded with messages, particularly if you're on this channel because you are an energy worker, or because you already have an interest in your own divination or in witchcraft, things like that, because we tend to draw in a lot of people, right? People are intrigued by the slight difference in energy, and that means that we tend to have very broad social nets, even if we're only very, very close with 1 or 2 people. And we tend to be, you know, the person on the bus that someone comes and sits next to and tells their life story to, or the person at a party that ends up with somebody drunk and crying and sort of confessing the darkest secrets. And that's not to be negative about those people or to say that it's a negative thing, but there is a certain management within energy work, not just of your own energy and of cleansing a space and all of that, but of the incoming kind of influx of people and the extent to which you set up healthy boundaries with different sorts of people in different ways in order to keep your own awareness flowing and sort of, I want to say, uninfluenced by whoever it is that's coming from the outside as a kind of attachment to you. That's not even to say that, you know, it's not even to be arrogant and say that, like, oh, you're this beacon and everybody wants a piece or something. It's just to say that people are intrigued by the difference. They may have a stage of intrigue, come in, ask you 1 or 2 questions, and then find your energy from where you are to be absolutely abhorrent, and then they go on their way. But in that process of coming in to investigate you before they kind of head off in their own direction, they are drawing energy from you, right? And if you have enough of those kinds of connections over a day or a week or a month, sometimes you can get very depleted, particularly if you're already tapping into energy via tarot or other forms of divination, or you get like dream messages, psychic messages, anything like that. If you're a complete skeptic and none of that relates and you're just here for a thought experiment, this is just referring to people coming in because they're curious about you, and whether or not they go on their own way again, that's still a process for you. That's still an energy expenditure, right? And I don't think in the age of social media that people really appreciate, confirmation. In the age of social media, I'm not sure that people really appreciate that process of give and take quite enough, right? I'm also going back to my energy workers. You may be somebody who your friends and family know you're an energy worker, even if you don't relate to them in a professional capacity, and they're coming in and sort of drawing on your energy or asking you for things that are related to what it is that your knowledge base is about. But you're already, what I'm hearing is you're already saving the world. You're already dealing with other things, tapping into other energies, putting your focus elsewhere. All of this in combination has left you feeling extremely overwhelmed, to the point where I think some of you are having trouble with sleep. What are these? There's something about these kind of hill shapes here, or mountains. Some of you, I'm hearing you getting recurring dreams about moving uphill or up a mountain. It reminds me of one that I used to have as a child for various reasons, where I was going up a kind of rock face in a wheelchair, and the wheelchair would tip back because the rock face was so steep. So I had to absolutely rely on the person pushing me, that was like under me, to push up and be able to climb the rock, right? And it was this, as an adult, I realised it was a dream about codependence and interdependence and the extent to which one has to rely on others and all that sort of stuff. But again, you may be dreaming about slopes or about mountainous things, or about, trust falling into groups of other people, or other people not being able to trust you. Guilt dreams are a big thing with this kind of energy management. So there's all of that kind of coming in. And then with the Two of Pentacles, this is you juggling the expectations of different people. This could be from a relatively happy space, right? It may just be that your final thoughts at night are, oh, I must text so-and-so. Oh, I still haven't replied to that email. Something, very weak in strength in that kind of a way, where you're relatively happy, all the way over to, I have these major connections that require major energetic input and influence. I have people to genuinely take care of. I have financial investment in them, time and physical energy in making sure that they're all right. And there are several of these things going on at once, and I cannot sleep on top of it, right? So there's this, it's funny that the energy is empowerment in the same way that the last one was exuberance, and it was a reading that demonstrated a lack of that in the present and a promise of it in the future. It's almost like you don't feel empowered right now, or the empowerment that you have is a confidence in yourself, socially or energetically, that is, I don't want to say being misused, but is being overused because there aren't firm boundaries in place with everyone. And this may, in some cases, with the Temperance being in reverse, lead to you drawing firmer boundaries with some people that you actually want to let in than is what you wanted to express or what you wanted to do. So I'm sort of thinking of a personal circumstance where someone had like a backlash or a angry reaction to involvement from me on a day that they didn't expect, because they were so overwhelmed by supporting family and supporting friends and putting into work and dealing with their own emotional management. And it was very much like, I'm drawing a hard boundary and we're not talking now. But I understood at the time that it came from a place of, and I bet you wish you could draw that hard boundary with any of these other things also pulling on your energy at the moment. And, lo and behold, that sort of ended up being what transpired. So there's this impulsivity around saying, listen, no, I can't take the call right now, not today. but potentially with people that you really care about, right? And that's partly why up at night, partly why guilt. Seeing the potential for sacred beauty in all things, all people, really loving connections that you have, but not being able to give them enough time because your time is spent on other stuff that is necessary but not necessarily chosen, right? So for those of you who need to have a work social media or a broad work network, or who are, you know, coming to grips with a new course, a new town, a new job, and you have to be social in that environment, and that's a good thing, it's perhaps detracting and depleting in terms of your existing connections. And there's this push-pull here of, how the fuck do I see to everybody, right? How do I get round all of this? For some of you, you've maybe had a social media cleanse, and it's kind of, you know, you've gotten rid of some people because you don't talk, but there is a guilt around potentially respecting those people, or knowing that those people have love for you, and feeling like it's cruel to cut them out, but just not being able to have the time to explain to them all individually that, like, okay, we haven't seen each other in X amount of years, and I'm dealing with all of this, and I can't be loving in my immediate environment, and I can't be in line with my purpose with the people currently in my life if I'm also spending energy checking this and doing that and responding to this and making sure this person isn't upset that I haven't been in touch, etc. This is something I really struggle with. So, you know, pot calling kettle, and if you're one of my friends watching, you will know that I don't always reply to stuff, and sometimes it takes me months or years to even see a DM because, like, I'm already in the mode of, like, this is my hierarchy of things I reply to and when, in terms of how much things affect my immediate life and how much I can give to people. And then, you know, if the bottom of the thing is, say, a Facebook message, they will just go unread and I will seem like a complete jerk. And I feel, excuse me, throat said to going, I clearly have guilt about that communication, right? Maybe I'll go and address some of that after this reading. But there is something like that with you, where in order to just keep all the balls in the air in terms of your immediate connections, or, you know, if this 11th house was broader in terms of organisations that you work for, charitable things that you do, ways that you have influence in the world in terms of activism, or starting particular establishments, institutions, being an educator, being a healer, all this kind of stuff, it's all affected by how much your energy is pulled on in a day, and where and why, and to what extent you say, I'm sorry, I don't know you and we're on a bus, I really need to use this commute time to do this instead of listening to your life story, in a more compassionate way than that, but then still feeling guilt about potentially stopping that person from interacting with you when they needed to, right? Because that's the thing with human interaction. There is always, in everything, an element of rejection, because rejection is choosing. And some of you came to this reading just to hear that phrase, right? That selection is rejection, that picking out what it is that you want to focus attention on automatically means that you're going to lose a lot of stuff that you no longer want to focus on. And that can be a very healing thing to realise when it gives you permission to let go of a group or a past or a set of strangers even that are pulling on your energy and time. But it can also be a really difficult thing to realise when you have to choose between a commitment that you really want to put your energy in the future versus your current circumstances, your current friendships, your current people that you feel a lot of love and affection for and want to help out and want to be involved with and interact with. There's a kind of draining of joy from this, and it's odd that it's a friendship reading because you would think that friendships, connections are the place where joy resides. But again, it's, as with pile one, it's about energy management. It's about figuring out how much you have to give to certain situations, people, even topics, right? Hobbies, and how much it actually fits in with your current and future circumstances. Both of these readings, in a way, have been about value systems, because you're left with depleted resources, having to choose how to spend those resources wisely. So you know, if you came from the last pile, you will know that that is in terms of cognitive and energy management and how you integrate the old and the new selves. If you're here for this pile, it's to do with what it is socially that you keep on, what it is socially that you let go, and who it is that you accept that you're going to piss off in the end, because there is no reality where everybody is happy with you all the time. If you're someone who's been accused of codependency in the past, whether or not that was accurate for you, it might be that that's because there are people in your life that you've had to disappoint in order to remain around others. And then you've kind of overinvested, perhaps, in those people that you've been around in that decision, right? Because you almost feel guilty about, well, I let this go, so I really must put focus here. That can sometimes even be true of situations, right? It's like, well, if you're going to leave this job, you better give the next thing your all. And there becomes this like guilt complex around it, which is quite unhealthy. There becomes a codependence on the new job working out, or the new person working out, or the new group of friends working out. And that can be a bit of a strain too. All these kinds of things can keep you up at night, because it is a delicate balance, which is what temperance communicates. I'm also noticing that in this deck, she's not using the cups, pouring water from one to the other. So temperance is more fiery. There's that absence of water. So again, outbursts at people because you're feeling generally overwhelmed. But also, there's a lack of emotional expression about these circumstances. You don't feel able to talk to anyone about this, perhaps because of the accusation that you're already neglectful. I don't think you are neglectful. I think that you have a lot more incoming things to prioritize than the average person does, because you've chosen to engage in energetic work, or because you've chosen a lot of different kinds of hobbies and interests and things, and those things, again, they don't necessarily mesh. I always have this thing with myself where I imagine maybe having a wedding, and I'm like, how would I invite all my different sets of friends to this wedding? Because they come from different hobbies, from different locations, from different worldviews in many cases, certainly different socioeconomic strata, different kind of value systems on how they've lived, all of this kind of stuff. And I just see them ending up, if not in physical fights, then in kind of arguments about stereotyping the other person, etc. And you may be like me, where although you fit into all of those worlds, it doesn't mean that those worlds all fit together. And you have to kind of compartmentalize different platforms, but also different ways of seeing people into different sets of people. So you may do brunch with one group, and then you may have your Instagram for another kind of people, and then your Facebook might be to do with your work and, you know, something else. It's like, you're kind of doing what I do, where you're putting these things into boxes so that you can manage them individually whilst causing the least offence. Because, and this is going to come up with these two, you don't want people to see you engage with other people as a choice, right? Because you don't want it to seem like a rejection of them if you're talking to someone else because you're talking about an urgent essay due on Monday, or because you're talking about the town that you currently live in that you have to talk about now, right? It doesn't mean that you don't want to answer that email from your great auntie Doris, but if your great auntie Doris saw you engaging with all these other people and ignoring her email, she might feel, you know, hurt, justifiably. So there's that kind of sense in it, both that you feel you can't combine the groups that you're in, and also that you feel that you almost have to keep these people secret from each other, lest anyone get truly pissed off about the fact that you're not engaging as much in their particular mode, on their particular platform. You're not turning up on Saturday drinking sessions anymore, you're not doing this, you know, whatever it is. There's also, with the Two of Pentacles, a sense of juggling excuses, and I'm not demonizing you when I say this, because I hope I've made clear that this is something I've very much experienced. But there is this sense of like, you're telling one group one thing in order to be able to buy some time to address somebody else, or to answer a work email, or to just sleep and get some energy back, particularly if you came from pile one, right? Because again, it's a very ableist societal assumption that all of us have the energy all the time to be doing all of these things, to be managing all of these friendships as regularly as normal people would be doing, right? Or as people with maximum energy, should I say, would be doing. So there's also a sense of that, of like keeping it quiet what you've been up to, because you just don't have the physical energy to meet up with everybody in the time that they would want to, even though you love them, even though you care about them, even though they do match where it is you're going and you can see the sacred beauty in them all. But the sort of answer to that is this belief that everything is possible. I want to kind of reassure you in this reading that you can address everybody. It's just that you have to accept that it takes time. And in your case, I'm sorry, but I'm going to reiterate, it does take rejection. I think there are certain things, certain people that you might need to let go of now. Sorry if, sorry, I just laid an egg. I'm always carrying crystals on my person, and this one just fell out and rolled by Chunky Boy. This is my smaller amethyst, which I call Chamberlain after the Skeksis, because it looks like a dark crystal. But you may be called to work with amethyst while you're juggling these things. But yeah, I do feel there's stuff to let go of. Amethyst may be useful in the kind of exorcism energy of, okay, what's my 5 to 10 year plan? Where am I now? What are my values now? How are they different from my values when I met this group, when I did this hobby, when I lived in this town, when I was going out with this person, when I regularly saw these family members? All of that needs to be sort of checked in on after this reading, immediately after, if you've got the time, in order to say who stays and who goes. Because I do feel that if not letting go of people completely, there is a need to minimize your contact with some people who are pulling on your energy, who are pinging your phone, who are turning up at your house, even for some of you I'm hearing, when actually you need to be putting your focus in something new, and particularly in connections where there is an established reciprocal closeness, which is not altered by your life circumstances anyway, you know, your core tribe, if you like. King of Wands reverse, I think that this has damaged your get up and go. I think it's affected the extent to which you do reach out. I think you may have been quite a jovial, jubilant, exuberant character before you started to get overwhelmed by all of this, and that has almost flipped that personality upside down. And if you're thinking of if you are watching this, one particular person that I'm thinking of, I love you. And if I knew you in your 20s and I now know you towards the end of that time, and there's been a big shift there, yes, this reading is for you. It's confirmation. I love you. I believe in you. Hit me up whenever you feel ready, and you can let go of some stuff. It's fine. I feel like one person in particular is watching this because of this King of Wands energy, and I just needed to say it. But you know, whoever you are, because this is also a reading for many, many other people, I do feel like there's almost a change in personality with you. You may have gone from the magical child expression. You may have been somebody who was childlike rather than childish, you know, in the best way, in the sort of Robert Greene natural archetype kind of a way, and very appealing to a large group and very happy with that, very socially gregarious, very outgoing. Lots of different hobbies, lots of fingers in different pies, living your best life, and then it's sort of accumulated and accumulated over the years, and now there is just too much going on, and it has completely knocked you out of that persona. For some, I'm even hearing maybe into a period of depression, and if that is you, obviously I'm not a medical practitioner, please do seek help, but there is a sense of being utterly depleted by a process which itself is not negative, right? Making more friends, having more hobbies, doing more things, maybe even having more sexual partners for some of you, is not a bad thing in itself. But when it mounts up and mounts up and mounts up, and there's never a clearing out of that energy, or there's never a kind of KonMari style process of what brings me joy here and now, it can become something which inverts and becomes worrying and becomes hard to juggle and sends you out of balance and sends you out of you. It can shunt you out of a realm of confidence and sweetness and being a light for other people in your life into a thing of just wanting to stay at home, just wanting to tell people to fuck off, and just not having energy for anything, which I feel for some of you, not all of you, for some of you that's where you're at the moment. And with the devil in reverse, there's a resisting of temptation here, and I actually think that's you stopping yourself from checking in with people in front of other people, as described earlier, right? You don't want to piss somebody off by definitely being openly in touch with another person. So there's that constant battle in your mind, and it's very overwhelming. So let's get some more cards on this. We'll have 3 more, I think, to sort of go into how to deal with this a bit better. Page of Cups, that's a nice solution. Ace of Wands, okay. Yeah. 10 of Pentacles, lovely. We ended on Pentacles in the last reading as well, and it became hopeful. And empowerment is a really key phrase for the 10 of Pentacles. So these are kind of working together, so I'm going to talk about them all together, but they do, you know, if you know tarot, you'll know which I'm referring to at which time. But there is a sense of checking in with your process, as I described. You know, spoilers, that is something you need to do sort of sooner rather than later. But it's going to be more of an intuitive and imaginative process than you think at the moment. I want to start with this almost because I was talking about values earlier and who meets your current values and who will take you into an empowering future and who will empower you in this moment that you're in, you know? Who is relevant to your current career, who is local to you, who is someone who has always stood by you, who is someone who is okay with you occasionally not being in touch, because that's a big factor, right? The patience of others, particularly when you're an energy worker. Who is it in your life that is part of your legacy picture? Maybe even for some of you who is part of your future family. And that doesn't have to be in the traditional nuclear sense. It can be chosen family, chosen tribe, particularly if you're LGBT. This may resonate for you, of like, who is in your community in that strong sense of allies, right? Who is allied with you. And therefore, you know, because we talked about the flip side of the coin, who is not, right? Because I think when you figure out who it is that is coming with you, you will automatically realise who it is that isn't compatible with them. And maybe I talked about the wedding party analogy to sort of demonstrate that a little better, because it's almost like there is a specific person that is involved in this who automatically rules out a few other people who would argue with them, fight with them, not be kind of, sorry, this is drifting, I'm not really sure. Your mind may wander as you're doing this process. That's okay, is what I'm being told. Oh, there's a pigeon just landed very, very close to me. Hello, sir. I know I haven't fed you. I'm sorry. I'll get to it, all right? Sorry, I normally leave food out for the birds. I do feel as well with this, if there is someone who's instantly come to mind, and there'd been a pigeon here in the UK, and indeed around the world, pigeons used to be the way of messaging before instant messenger, right? You sent, before even snail mail and sort of mail networks, you would send a pigeon, a trained pigeon, with a little message tied around its neck to somebody who needed to receive that. And it's glaring at me like, I'm not taking your fucking messages. Sorry, not you. I'm talking about you as a species. I'm talking about the wonderful history around you, my dear friend. You're looking beautiful today. I like the purple on your neck. And he's gone. They don't like compliments, I swear. Anyway, to focus back in, sorry. Pigeons were used for messaging, right? And you're thinking of someone specific with this. During or immediately after this reading, whoever this person is that you're sure you're taking forward, that's the first person to contact. That's what I'm hearing. You need to send them a message straight away, and not by pigeon, not by slowpoke, right? No offense to the pigeons around my building. Yeah, and like I say, by knowing who they are, automatically, if you think of people in your life that they maybe don't get on with, or that would have... I'm going to show my roots here, and we are talking about friendships from different eras, so that sort of fits, but I'm from a place called Sheffield, and we have a very specific accent, which I'm sort of standardizing and losing a bit because I don't live there anymore. There is a video, which I'll link if I can, of an Iron Man toy with a Sheffield accent threatening another toy, and the quote is, "Has that got beef with me?" Meaning, excuse me, dear sir, would you like to start a fight? Do you have issues we need to resolve together, perhaps in fisticuffs, right? But it's that very Sheffield way of like, "Has that got beef with me?" So like, if this person has beef with anyone that you know, or indeed anyone that you know has got beef with this person, as we say, that's a sign of who to let go of as well. Because if you take one, it's no longer appropriate, applicable, practical even, to sneakily speak to the other or to have kind of secret conversations, secret meetups. I just think it's going to clash, because I think your core tribe are going to be so all-encompassing to your life, to your lifestyle. They're going to be around you so much that if you're sort of involved with people that aren't compatible on whatever level with these people, it's going to cause you more unnecessary problems, juggling, etc. That's not to say to cut out people who don't deserve to be, you know, excommunicated from your life completely in a cold way. That's not what I'm advising. What I'm saying is that if you've had suspicions that there are some people to leave behind already, and they don't happen to vibe with who you see as your legacy crowd, your legacy friends, for some I'm hearing your future spouse, etc., then it's time to cut those ties, and it's time to immediately message that person and sort of be like, "Hey, I'm sorry I've been out of touch. How's about we, whatever," right? And that's your kind of first step. The other part of this, I want to say like another Gilmore Girls style pro-con list of like who it is that you're around a lot and who it is, well, not even around because proximity is not relevant, but who it is that you feel your energy would be correctly applied to at this time in alignment with your purpose and highest good, right? When you're looking at that from that logical space, I also want you to go into the instinctive and the imaginal. So, if there are people that you're thinking, I really need to only be in touch with these people via the occasional, I don't know, Instagram post or whatever people do. I'm very strategic about my communication, so I don't know. But, excuse me, it's confirmation. This is why you don't see an Insta for this channel, by the way, because I'm already managing a lot of connections, and I have, you know, secret servers for one thing or another thing, and blah blah blah. But there's kind of, I think you need to imagine in the scenarios where you need to be strategic within those places or within those groups, what will happen, right? So there is imaginal work to do, there is fantasy work, there is, in this incredible picture I have of my life in 10 years, when I'm a successful blah de blah, and I have and I'm with then do I see this person vibing well with that? And if I'm hearing for some of you that this may be surprising, because there may be people that you're taking forward that you possibly didn't expect to hit up first, right? Or you maybe haven't messaged them in a while, and you're really surprised to have this sudden fantasy of the future and be like, oh, and they're there, and you know, so and so's cooking, or so and so brought the whatever, and with that whatever, I'm hearing something very specific from spirit, which I can't say on YouTube, but yes, have a good time. Yes, you may have someone bringing supplies if you're into that. But there is this thing where some of the people that I think you logically expect to be in this picture, you're like, oh, actually that wouldn't vibe, or that would bring this down, or that would alter this, or I'd have to justify this about my interests or my hobbies or my career, or it would be a bit awkward here, or they might report back to this person, which would cause problems here, or whatever. And then conversely, I also think that there may be someone you haven't spoken to in 10, 15 years that you're picturing your future in, and you're like, and my best friend from Scout Group is there. Or, you know, whatever it is, right? My uni buddy that I haven't seen for this long, or my childhood friend, my work colleague from 5 years ago, whatever. And I want you to really take note of your instinctive dream kind of responses to those things. Also, for some of you, dream feedback, as we spoke about earlier, is real feedback. I want you to take how your unconscious sees people very seriously. So if there are people that you feel pressured or not even pressured, but if you feel a pull to address first in this social nightmare, and you've been having bad dreams about them or dreams where they've done things that are a bit sus, please, for the love of God, listen to those messages. I speak as somebody who's had people seriously turn against them in a very quick fire amount of time and, come for my entire life in very covert ways. And I would urge you to check in with yourself and how you're feeling about specific people and say, is this a good vibe? And I don't mean good vibes only. I don't mean people can only speak about positive things or it has to be high vibrational or, all of these very problematic things. I mean instead that if your unconscious is consistently expressing somebody as being shifty when you're in your dream state and you're not seeing it in your reality, maybe treat it as something that could come into your reality if you don't listen to those dreams. And that's not to alarm, it's just to say, again, I've been in that position and I wished I'd listened to myself earlier because I would have done a lot of damage control, right? Because some people don't want to see your success. Some people don't want to see you receiving social attention even, right? And they may not express that outwardly. They may indeed have very conflicting feelings where they love you dearly and they speak about wanting to empower you. But if your gut is off about that particular thing, or if your gut says that something's off, definitely look into how you can distance from those individuals and how you can instead invite in for people that it's like, no, guaranteed this person is there all the way. I only ever feel good about them. They've been there in the past, or I feel really positive about them if they're brand new, if they're in your kind of new situation you're embarking on, you just get a good feeling. Absolutely trust that. Moving into this Wands, that is exactly what this is saying, right? The Ace of Wands is very often a sort of call to the gut instinct, to the motivational force of the spirit. It can also be a thing about who you're sexually attracted to, which weirdly, I'm not going to say that all people you fancy are good people, right? But if you're drawn to somebody sexually and they're not your usual type, or you can't sort of understand it fully physically, but you just really find them attractive, sometimes that's your gut's way of telling you, like, no, you just really vibe with this person. Whether it ever turns sexual or not, right? Whether it ever becomes a thing or not. And again, there are very untrustworthy people and not so great people that we can be incredibly sexually drawn to. They may be some of the ones you're getting rid of, right? Or distancing from. So I'm not here to encourage like everybody you fancy is automatically in. That's not what I'm saying at all. But if there is someone that you feel a draw to that is almost a sexual pull and you can't put your finger on it because it doesn't play to what you usually like, or you're already in a happy couple or something like that, this may be just your gut response's way of telling you via your kind of root and sacral chakras, no, this person is actually quite good for you. There is a draw to them for some reason. There is something there to investigate further. But again, not all people who are sexy are good, right? Don't fall into the sort of beauty privilege trap with that. I'm more talking about people who you are attracted to in a non-physical sense and you can't quite get your head around it, okay? And it's just for some. But either way, there is this gut response. You may even feel it in your body, particularly in your solar plexus or sacral centers. You may feel an either, you think of a person or someone says their name or something and you feel like a real response there, which is negative, like a pain or a twinge or a sort of tension feeling, and that's telling you like this is not the person to contact first, or this is not the person to be around most. Or you may get the opposite of that, where you feel a bit of a flutter, or particularly for me, there's one person, and it's who was possibly watching earlier, where I just think of their friendship, I think of their name, and it's like my chest opens. It's crazy. It's like, oh, heart chakra's awake. So really pay attention to your body, to the way you dream about people, to your instinctive responses in whatever way that you receive those kinds of messages. And just, is it a good vibe? Is it something you want to be carrying into the future? Is it something you want to be around now? And instead of ranking things through fear, and when I say ranking, I'm not talking about assorting people by their worth. That's not at all what I'm saying here. I'm talking about ranking sort of the task of who you will get in touch with first in an order, so as to energy manage this and make it easier on yourself. When you're in that process, make it instinctive, make it fluid. Go for people first who make you feel happiest. Follow your joy, follow your bliss. See whether connections as well as objects spark joy. That's not to objectify people. That's to say the most empowering thing for you, the thing to get you back into magical child energy, is to only have people in your immediate vicinity, or hitting up your phone, or sliding into your DMs, or whatever it is, that are joy bringers. Or that, you know, even if they're not joy bringers because they're not currently happy, or you're not currently happy, or whatever. By joy, I mean something deeper than happiness. I mean, on balance, no matter what mood either of you are in, does this person fill you with a kind of inspiration, with a kind of intrigue? Are you consistently interested, perhaps even for years, in what it is that makes them tick, in what it is that they've been doing, thinking about? Do you want to love them, is what I want to say. And that can be just as true for people you've just met as really long-standing connections. So I don't want you to do this guilt thing that society does of saying, well, you're in a family and blood is blood, you know, misunderstanding the actual full phrase of blood is thicker than water, which goes on for a little more and means exactly the opposite, FYI. Or, you know, if you've been friends with someone for a very long time, but your values just don't align, I don't want you to feel that because of that long-standing connection, you're going to be a bad person, or you're going to be really upsetting to them if you distance a little bit just to take care of business and sort of sort out things that are more relevant to you here and now. Partly because, and this is the underlying truth of this rejection flip side, if you're interacting with people who are not for your highest good, you're not for theirs either. You're draining their energy or pulling their energy from contacts that would be really beneficial to them, to their joy, to their healing, to their purpose, right? So if it makes you feel less kind of shitty to think about it in that way, and to approach this very gradually and sort of checking in with yourself in more of a slow way than constant contact seems to demand of us, then I want you to reframe it as, I don't want to keep anybody I love from anything that loves them more than I can. Yeah? So that's really the underlying thing of this reading. Doing right by yourself, empowering yourself, is always kind of going to lead people to their own journeys, right? That's not to say that selfishness is correct. That's to say that someone in their selfishness who is also in their purpose will cause a chain reaction in everyone around them, where they are shunted into what it is that they're meant to do. Sometimes through revulsion, sometimes through attraction. Yeah? It's kind of a truth of the universe, right? If you're in your purpose, even if your purpose is to be a mass murderer, then you're going to trigger everybody around that thing to do what it is that they're meant to do. And again, you can reframe negative connections or connections that aren't as easy in that way and be like, I can let go of this, because in letting go, I'm giving this person forgiveness and permission to go and seek out what it is that would really bring them back to themselves. I hope that was useful to you. I know it's a bit of a complex, overwhelming one, because in all of these connections and with all this kind of guilt, there are a lot of philosophical issues that are difficult to parse out and difficult to explain from my end without sounding like a complete douchebag. But I hope I've done so without being a jagweed. Let me know in the comments what you agreed, disagreed with, what you need clarification on, etc. If it was useful, please like, subscribe, ding the dong, thank you kindly. I am doing youtober, so there will be at least one reading a day for the rest of the month, probably more because I've had a brief health gap, if you didn't see the intro. So there will be some days with 2-3 readings, so look forward to that. And yeah, I hope you're all right. I hope that this process is rejuvenating and empowering for you rather than guilt-ridden and anxiety-strewn, right? Please tap into Amethyst if you need a helper. Also, Jade wanted to turn up, and as I said before, I believe that's fluorite. And yeah, I think that's everything. So take care, and I hope to see you in the next one.